Hello, I'm Gail Grant, VGEA President. Welcome to the 2020 Virginia Governmental Employees Association Annual Meeting. I call it the virtual experience. Many thanks to all of you that participated in our poll. Your feedback really gave us the impetus to expand participation in the annual meeting event, especially since we were not able to hold regional meetings this year due to the coronavirus. It is my hope that you will enjoy and benefit from the presentations from our key stakeholders. Trish Bishop from VRS, Emily Elliott, Department of Human Resource Management, will be with us, and our lobbyists from KVCF, Dylan Bishop and Linwood Butner. Our upcoming VGA activity of interest for you are, first, nominations and election of board of directors, a beta version of our updated website, bylaw revisions, and the final issue of this year's foresight. Please continue to open and read the VGA communications you receive in your computer inbox or home mailbox. One of the popular components of VGA activity is our scholarship program. Now I'd like to introduce you to Cynthia Brittain. She works at the Department of Taxation and supervises the Court Debt Collection Unit. As a VGA board director, Cynthia serves on the membership and legislative committees and chairs the scholarship committee. Under her leadership, the number of scholarship applications has increased, and she has enhanced the recognition of our scholarship recipients in their hometowns. I am pleased to welcome Cynthia to the podium.
Good morning, fellow VGEA members. It is my honor to announce the 2020 annual scholarship winners. Since 2011, scholarships have been awarded annually to active and retired members, their spouses, or their children and grandchildren. And this year's winners include Cameron Edmonds. She is a daughter of VGA member Crystal Edmonds. Cameron is attending the Nova Southeastern University and is working on to become a speech-language pathologist. Our next winner is Ella Wolf. She is the granddaughter of VGA member C. Kermit Spurl Jr. Ella is attending John Tuller Community College and wants to become a veterinarian. Our next winner is Kaylee Sykes. She is the daughter of VGA member Paula Sykes. Kaylee is attending the University of Virginia in Wise, and her major is biology, and she wants to become a pharmacist. Sydney Berg is the daughter of VGA members Brian and Susan Berg. Sydney will be attending the University of Virginia in Wise, and she is pursuing a career in nursing. A special thanks to all that applied. Each of these that I announced will be receiving a $1,000 scholarship. And for next year, it's coming around the corner. In December, we'll begin to see the next information about scholarships for 2020. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rick Fowler. I am the Chief Lobbyist for VGA and also work with membership development. I'm here today to introduce you to the Executive Director of the Virginia Retirement System, Trish Bishop. Trish Bishop serves as the Director of the Virginia Retirement System, an $81 billion public employee retirement system. VRS provides benefit administration to more than 723,000 members and beneficiaries, including several retirement plans, insurance programs, and disability programs. VRS covers teachers, state employees, and most employees in the Commonwealth counties, cities, and political subdivisions. Previously, Trish has served as the VRS Deputy Director, responsible for implementation of benefit policy and legislation, benefit processing, retirement counseling, call center services, disbursements, employer and member training, and insurance programs. Prior to becoming the Director of VRS, Tricia served as the VRS Director of Policy, Planning, and Compliance, where her responsibilities included liaison support with the executive branch and the General Assembly and with the systems actuary. Before joining VRS, Trish served as a principal legislative analyst with the Joint Legislative Audit Review Commission, known to us as JLARC. She also worked with the Senate of Virginia in the executive branch. During her 27 years in public service, Trish has been active in a number of professional community organizations, including the National Association of State Retirement Administrators, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, the Virginia Executive Institute of Alumni Association, the National Legislative Program Evaluation Society, and the American Society of Public Administration. Trish and VRS have been a great friend to VGEA and to the Commonwealth. I now introduce you to Trish Bishop.
Hi everyone, I'm Trish Bishop. I'm the Director of the Virginia Retirement System. Before I begin, I want to express my sincere appreciation to all of you for all that you do, all that you continue to do, without fail, for those who depend upon the services you provide. Thank you for what you do collectively and individually to serve the people of the Commonwealth. I always appreciate the invitation to an opportunity to be with members and retirees, particularly with this VGEA group. While I truly wish we could all be together in person, it's great to be able to leverage technology to be with you today to share VRS information with you with probably your very first virtual VGEA conference. As far as today's agenda, I'll start with an overview and talk about member resources, financial wellness, retiree benefits, and then resources in retirement. So let's get started. As an organization, our commitment is to serve those who serve others. And VRS is honored to serve members like you who serve others throughout the Commonwealth each and every day. Particularly during this pandemic and these trying times, we are incredibly grateful for your service. As we work to deliver on our commitment, it's our privilege to help our members, you, plan for tomorrow, today. With almost 743,000 active and retired members, VRS is now the 18th largest public pension plan in the United States and the 41st largest public or private plan in the world. The assets in VRS Trust are solely for the benefits of members and beneficiaries. This is a look at the value of the trust over time. When you look at the bar chart, you'll notice a few dips, reflecting the post-2000 tech bubble and the 2008-2009 Great Recession. However, the fund has generally maintained a steady climb since the Great Recession. At June 30th, 2020, the end of the fiscal year, the fund balance was $81.6 billion. After the COVID-19 pandemic led to several months of market volatility, we're pleased to have that result. In looking at the fund amount earlier in the week, the value of the fund has climbed back to $84 billion. Historically, investment returns fund about 2/3 of retirement benefit payments. Despite volatility, particularly in March, VRS ended the fiscal year in positive territory. Our June 30th performance return was 1.4%. But before I move on, I wanted to address a couple of questions that we received regarding the fund from VGEA members who wanted to know the status of the fund during this period of uncertainty. We understand that during this pandemic, the financial markets have created concerns among our members and retirees. As just noted, the fund sits at about $84 billion as of Wednesday and ended the fiscal year with a positive return. As an investor in both public and private assets, VRS will experience some volatility and experience the same market position as those more broadly. But we positioned the fund and the portfolio to weather these impacts over the long term as soundly as possible. I should note that no single investment type dominates the highly diversified portfolio. And VRS investment professionals continuously monitor and focus on managing the portfolio for the long term. Importantly, investment performance does not affect your defined benefit retirement benefit amount. It's calculated using a formula. As an aside, if you have a balance in a VRS defined contribution plan, such as the Commonwealth 457 plan, you can learn more about market risk and return and the impact on your investment portfolio by visiting your plan's website or calling the plan. Now let's look at benefits and information related to VRS members. Here are a few observations I'd like to share. Lots of folks might not realize that VRS not only serves state employees, but also the Commonwealth's public school teachers and employees of counties, cities, towns, and political subdivisions. Teachers are actually our largest employee group. The hybrid plan is the new plan for most new hires. With the exception of hazardous duty employees, such as those who are covered by spores and valors, new folks go into the hybrid retirement plan, which combines a defined benefit component with a defined contribution component. Out of the 75,000 active general state employees, about 29,000 state employees are hybrid plan members. Soon, the hybrid retirement plan will exceed the number of Plan 1 members. So this slide here gives you some insights into the demographics and benefits provided to the populations we serve. It's a snapshot of a cohort of folks who have retired as of June 30th, 2019. In looking more closely at these three member groups, active state members have a slightly higher average salary than the other groups. Due in part to their higher average salary and more years of service at retirement, the average annual benefit amount for state retirees exceeds that of the other groups. Currently, the average age at retirement for state employees is 64.2. But I'll add one thing that isn't on this slide, is that the average age at retirement has been creeping up over time. At 64.2, it's moving closer and closer to 65 when folks become eligible for Medicare. So where do retirees live? Maybe it's our climate, maybe it's the scenery and geography, maybe it's that Virginia really is for lovers that keeps most of our retirees in the Commonwealth. But about 86% of retirees remain in Virginia. In fiscal year 2020, VRS paid approximately $5.3 billion in benefits to our retirees. Whatever the reason, it's good news for all of us that most of our retirees remain in the Commonwealth along with those dollars. And these dollars get circulated back into the state and local economies. As an active member, VRS has resources for you to use throughout your career. I'll take a few minutes to walk you through them. Here are a few actions that you can consider, and I'll provide a bit more detail as we proceed through the presentation. To the extent that you're able, start saving early, but know that it's never too late to start. By saving, you pay yourself first, and you won't regret it. Particularly for hybrid plan members, Maximize your contributions and don't leave that employer match on the table. Plan and save with online tools and resources provided by VRS, like the Paycheck Calculator, your member benefit profile, the Defined Contribution Plans app, and SmartStep. Boost your knowledge with MyVRS Financial Wellness. Keep up with the latest VRS member information by subscribing to Member News. Ensure you understand your benefits by reviewing the publications available to you. Talk with a VRS counselor by phone or meet virtually. Update your beneficiaries. Organize your personal documents and important contacts with Get Organized or the Losing Your Loved One guide. I'd like to highlight that MyVRS is a go-to resource for you. If you've not established an account, please do so. Also, you'll want to claim your account for security purposes. MyVRS has a lot of great features: a new goal-based retirement planner, a refreshed benefit estimator, a self-service purchase of prior service component, security enhancements, and new features for retirees, new comparison tools to help college and university faculty members compare and contrast retirement plans and member options. Your member benefit profile is in MyVRS, and financial wellness resources, tools, and tips are all available there. Our work on MyVRS functionality continues as we gear up to accept retirement applications and beneficiary changes online soon. To start your retirement planning and create estimates, two of the most popular resources on the MyVRS site are the Retirement Planner and the Benefit Estimator. Another feature in MyVRS is the Member Benefit Profile. It provides information about your retirement and other benefits. Basically, it serves as an annual statement. On your MBP, you can see how you're doing in achieving your future goals. For example, the MBP compares the value of your benefits to a goal of 80% of your pre-retirement income. The 2020 MBPs are ready in your account now, so visit MyVRS and check it out. Now, picking up with the educational opportunities that we offer everything from one-on-one counseling to videos and webinars, and I'll highlight a couple of examples along the way. I want to share that while we are working remotely, you can still meet with a VRS counselor. To do so, you can call the contact center to schedule a phone appointment or even set up a virtual video appointment. One resource I invite you to sign up for is Member News, which is issued quarterly. Please sign up today. If you registered for MyVRS, Member News will go to the email address you used when you registered. The Commonwealth of Virginia 457 Deferred Compensation Plan can help you realize your retirement goals. With the Virginia Cash Match Plan, you can receive a cash match of 50% of your contribution to the 457 plan, not to exceed $20 per pay period. This can add up to $480 per year. Hybrid plan members must first maximize contributions into the hybrid 457 plan before receiving a cash match in the Virginia Cash Match Plan. Don't miss these opportunities, and you can enroll online or call toll-free. Before I move on, I had a few questions related to the deferred comp plan. First, what are the minimum and maximum amounts you can contribute? The minimum amount you can contribute is $10 per pay period. The maximum you can contribute is up to 100% of includable compensation, or the maximum listed on the website, whichever is less. However, $19,500 is the current standard limit. There are catch-up provisions that allow for additional deferrals under certain circumstances. Because it's never too late to save, catch-up provisions can help you make additional deferrals. The maximum limits are set by the Internal Revenue Code and usually change annually, so check out the website for the latest maximums. Another question that came in was, will the match increase? The cash match amount was established in about the year 2000. The General Assembly establishes the employer match for salaried state employees. The current maximum is $20 per pay date, with a total of $480 per year. and wage employees are not eligible for the match. At this time, I'm not aware of any proposal to change the match amount. There are a whole host of online resources and tools to assist you in saving for your future. For example, you can increase your contributions to your DC plan at a date and amount that you choose by using the Smart Step tool. You can see what your net paycheck will look like after making pre-tax contributions to your plan with the paycheck calculator. You might be surprised that with pre-tax contributions, your net check might be change a little less than you had anticipated. There's even an app for your defined contribution plans. The Boost Your Savings Calculator is one of the online tools available to you. If you're a visual person, this engaging tool shows you how your savings will grow over time and demonstrates the power of compound interest on your savings. You might be surprised to learn that even a small increase in what you save today can make a big difference over time. Our hybrid learning channel features a video series to educate members. Not only is it educational TV for members, but employers can use it as a resource when onboarding new employees. But before I move on, I want to pause to address a few more questions. The first was about how furloughs would affect retirement benefits. For some, there will be little to no impact. Average final compensation is derived from the highest 36 or 60 consecutive months of compensation over a person's entire career. It isn't unusual for members to select a date for retirement, but then realize due to a number of potential circumstances, it would not be in their best interest to retire at that date that they had hoped or anticipated. For most people, this means they'll continue working. This is a common occurrence when salary increases are canceled or delayed, or market conditions impact personal savings. Working a few more months may place you back within your desired benefit amount. So please use your MyVRS account to assist you in planning, or please call and speak with a retirement counselor. Another question was, can employees borrow from their defined benefit retirement plan and repay what they borrow with interest? To begin, the funds in a defined benefit plan are meant to provide a retirement benefit and not serve as a savings account. That stated, loans are simply not common in defined benefit plans because there are a number of unintended consequences and implications associated with these types of arrangements. To illustrate one challenge, VRS relies on investment income to fund member benefits. As noted early, historically, approximately 2/3 of benefits are paid via investment income. If funds are removed from the trust, there'll be fewer assets to be invested and less income will be generated. Removing member contributions through a loan program would require that funds be repaid with interest at the plan rate of 6.75%. Use of a lower interest rate would not be prudent for the trust. In current interest rate environment, members could likely borrow money from financial institutions at a more favorable rate than 6.75 in some cases. A defined benefit is just that, a specific benefit amount based on service and compensation that needs a specific amount of funding over time to fund it, and it's not based on investment income. Based on a number of factors, we don't believe that this proposal would yield positive results for members or the plan. Another question was, will there be an employee buyout? I've not heard anything regarding this at this time. However, consider that buyouts generally create an unfunded liability for the entire plan and can impact the funded status of the plan for all members. So now let's turn to financial wellness. It's no surprise to any of us that financial concerns have an impact in the workplace. According to a recent survey by Willis Towers Watson, Personal finances are the #1 stressor on employees during the workday. In Morgan Stanley research, 74% of employees say a financial wellness program is an important benefit. In the same survey, 60% said they would be more inclined to stay at a company or employer that offers a program to help them better manage their finances. To address this important issue, VRS provides financial wellness offerings in MyVRS. To check them out, go to your MyVRS account and access free financial wellness courses to help you become more money savvy. As of this spring, VRS members have completed more than 1,000 courses. Topics range from buying a home, assessing your personal insurance needs, mastering credit, and creating a financial plan. In addition to courses, tools and calculators help boost your knowledge. Educational games can be a fun way to learn. And let's be clear, these days, everyone could use a little more fun. In addition, MyVRS Financial Wellness has taken on a new level of meaning during the current pandemic. VRS's nationally recognized award-winning program has proven nimble during the economic crisis by serving up fresh articles and information to members on budgeting, managing credit and debt, and other money management issues, particularly important during the pandemic. As school begins, there are even articles about balancing remote work and your children's schooling. Now let's look more closely at your benefits in retirement. The COLA is 1.81% for both Plan 1 and Plan 2. It was effective July 1, 2020. The increase was included in your August 1 benefit payment for eligible retirees. COLAs allow your retirement benefit to keep pace with inflation, and it's an important part of your benefit. The code sets the COLA formula, and it's based on the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, or the CPIU, which is published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and is updated each July 1. During years of no inflation or deflation, the COLA is 0. The 2021 COLA will be considered in February at the Board of Trustees Benefits and Actuarial Committee. Your group life insurance coverage begins to reduce on January 1 following 1 calendar year after your employment ends. You may end employment and defer retirement until a later date. However, the group life insurance will begin reducing based on the last month of employment. The reduction rate is 25% each January 1 until it reaches 25% of the total life insurance benefit value at retirement. If you have at least 30 years of service credit, your coverage cannot reduce below an $8,000 minimum established by statute in 2015, which is currently $8,616. This is the minimum, and it is increased annually with inflation. This was a VGEA initiative. Another question from a VGEA member was about life insurance in retirement and the impact of furloughs on that amount. Your life insurance benefit is equal to your compensation at retirement, rounded to the next highest thousand, and then doubled. However, if you retire with 20 or more years of service credit, the death benefit will be based on your highest compensation as a covered employee, even if your salary at retirement is lower. As I've shared with you previously, it's very important to keep your beneficiary designations updated. We all know that we get busy and life marches on, but you may recall this cautionary tale. It's a sad day when a current spouse expects a benefit and you've never designated a different beneficiary from your former spouse to your new spouse. And the law requires us to pay the named beneficiary, in this case, your former spouse. This is not a happy day for the current spouse. So I implore you to please update your beneficiaries. To make this process easier, As we roll out new features in MyVRS, we are working on an online tool to help you manage your beneficiary designations, so stay tuned. Another benefit in retirement is the health insurance credit. If you retired with 15 or more years of service, you're eligible for the health insurance credit. The health insurance credit provides a reimbursement to assist with the cost of a retiree's health insurance premiums. The credit is $4 per month per year of service, and there is no cap. So if you have 30 years of service, the credit would be up to $120 per month. $4 times 30 years, $120. As a reimbursement under the Internal Revenue Code, the HIC cannot exceed the amount of the individual health insurance premium. And the credit ends upon death of the member and is not transferable to a spouse. It is a tax-free benefit, and most medical insurance is eligible, but has to cover only the member and not the spouse or dependents. Also, if you need to update VRS, if your premium amounts change or your coverage provider changes. I'd like to mention two other important forms. The first is the VRS 900, which allows you to name someone to speak on your behalf to VRS as your representative about benefits and account information. The second is the VRS 901, which creates a durable power of attorney, allowing you to appoint someone to make retirement system-related decisions on your behalf. So choose these folks carefully. The 900 allows them to speak on your behalf. The 901 actually allows that person to act on your behalf. These forms allow you to manage your personal information and protect its security. And while we're on the subject of security, I'd like to mention that you should be aware that VRS will not contact you and ask you for money. If you receive a call from someone claiming to be with VRS or offering financial counseling and you aren't sure about who they are or what they're asking about, please don't hesitate to contact us. Organize your personal information for yourself and others with Get Organized, our new guidebook for listing assets and documents and their location. We got the idea from a retired teacher. Also, the Losing a Loved One Guide for Families brochure guides you through organizing personal information for yourself or for a family member. They're available online at the VRS website. Include these with your important papers and consider reviewing them with your loved ones. The Get Organized Guide not only provides a helpful checklist, but also helps you create an inventory, including the location of your assets, important documents, and contacts. As a retiree, VRS provides you access to helpful resources as well. Ensure you've accessed your MyVRS account. There, you can access your 1099. You can view your retirement benefit statement. You can keep your address and contact information current. All these things can be done via MyVRS. You might not know that when you retire or terminate employment, you do not have to take your money out of the Commonwealth's 457 Deferred Compensation Plan. You can leave your money in the plan until you reach age 72, when you're required by federal law to take minimum distributions. Keeping your money in the 457 plan may provide you with potentially more cost-effective retirement opportunities than rolling your money into a traditional IRA. When you retire, you have access to telephone counseling, virtual face-to-face counseling, retiree news, which is published twice a year, and a dedicated retiree section of the VRS website. Also, you have access to MyVRS for retirees. And don't forget about your retirement roadmap. Finally, do you have a story to share or advice about life in retirement? I know that this group is full of vibrant, active, and interesting retirees. So if you have suggestions on what to do, what not to do, or tips on adjusting to retirement, please contact VRS. You might be our next retiree profile in Retiree News. So thank you so much for your interest in VRS, your time, and your attention. VRS has a strong commitment to helping you plan for tomorrow, today. And I hope that what I highlighted today will encourage you to take action in planning for your financial future. Thank you again for the opportunity to be with you. I'm hoping that the next time we meet, it will be in person. Please stay safe and be well, and thank you very much for your service to the Commonwealth. Have a great day.
Hello, my name is Marshall Turry. I'm the Executive Director for the Virginia Governmental Employees Association, and it's my pleasure to introduce Emily Elliott, who is Director of the Department of Human Resource Management. She was appointed by Governor Northam in 2018. Emily has worked in the state government for the past 27 years in a variety of positions with the Virginia Department of Transportation. On a national level, Emily chairs the Human Resource Subcommittee for the American Association of State and Highway Transportation Officers and serves as a founding steering committee member for the Southeastern Transportation Workforce Center at the University of Memphis. Emily holds a master's in education and human resources from George Washington University and an undergraduate degree in business administration and marketing. She is a certified human resource senior professional. It is my pleasure to introduce you, Emily Elliott.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm Emily Elliott, Director for the Department of Human Resource Management. It's my pleasure to speak to you today, although never did I envision last year that I would be standing here talking to you about some of the topics I'm going to cover today. I think it's fair to say that 2020 has been a year unlike any other, and we still have a few more months to go. Today I want to move pretty quickly through an update on our workforce data. You'll see that the workforce data hasn't really changed much from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20. I'm also going to highlight some of the biggest workforce issues that we've been working on this year, and those include a focus on workplace safety, compensation, benefits, employee engagement. I also cover some of the questions asked by VGEA members, so I do want to extend a thank you of appreciation for those who made an inquiry prior to this. And I will end with how to stay connected, because it's important that you have the resources to follow along with all the great things that we have underway. So to jump right in, we'll focus on workforce data first. And a lot of these materials, I tried to be consistent from last year in case you've seen me speak previously and you're kind of looking at to see how things have updated from one year to a next. This particular slide speaks to an employment with a 3-year trend. And here you'll see overall, there has been some reduction in executive positions from last year. There's about 500, a little over 500, about 544 fewer classified employees from the same reporting period. I do note that the slide shows executive branch, legislative, independent judicial employment levels, but keep in mind most of the work that we do and most of the information that I'm sharing in this presentation is really focused on the classified employees because that is the primary group that we serve, and that's a little over 58,000 employees who are subject to the Virginia Personnel Act. There are a few pieces of information in here for retirees, and I'm going to try to point that out specifically as I go along. So our workforce data, I always get a question about turnover. What's turnover been like in the last fiscal year? And this year it took a slight dip. I think that's the best way to say that, in that we went from losing just a little over 8,100 employees, and it's a slight dip because last year it was about 8,300 employees. And once again, you'll see that the biggest amount of that turnover is related to voluntary resignations, about 8.5%, and then 2.9% are related to retirements. I think I feel like a broken record from last year because once again, turnover in the first 5 years of employment continues to be an area of concern for us. And I show that on the next slide, and you'll remember I had this graph last year as well. And when you look at that very first bar on the slide from 0 to 5 years, it's almost 5,000 employees that leave during the first 5 years. So we continue to focus on that as a primary area that needs attention. My next update is just to give you a little bit of information about hiring. We hired a little over 6,300 employees. That was down from the prior year, and there's a reason for that. I'll mention it in a few minutes. What I will share is that we had a lot of hiring activity in the same categories as we did the prior year, but there were some other positions that saw a lot of hiring this year that I thought I would highlight. And so those were positions related to community and social service specialists, licensed practical and vocational nurses, housekeeping, office and court clerks. Again, just to throw a little difference there to show you some of the positions that had a lot more hiring activity than last year. But we still saw a significant number of positions like correctional officers, highway maintenance, psychiatric technicians, probation officers, still with a lot of turnover and a lot of hiring that takes place in those job categories. I also included a slide related to our demographics. This information does not really change from year to year significantly, and it did not this year. The only change in our demographic data was related to retirement eligibility, where we saw just the tiniest drop in folks that are eligible to retire, but it's still over 7,000 classified employees. And in the next 2 years, you can add another 2,400 employees to that. So I'm not going to cover every data point on here. But again, what I would like to highlight is that all this workforce data is available on DHRM's website. And I've tried to include a slide here where you can see how you can access this data if this is something that you're interested in looking at in far more detail than what I'm able to cover here in the time allotted today. I will also say, because this is my first slide that has the DHRM website mentioned, I know last year I talked about an update to that website, and I am so thankful and happy that we actually were able to refresh our website, and I hope you've had an opportunity to look at it. I think you'll find it easier to navigate and a lot of great information available. The next subject I'll move into is workplace safety. We really did kick off 2020 focused on workplace safety. We introduced, through the governor's directive, 2 new mandatory training requirements. You may recall these were 2 items related to the first being Virginia State Employee Safety and Awareness Training, and that was developed by the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. And that really focuses on some basic safety information related to severe weather events, man-made threats, how to evacuate a building, but also how to prepare for emergency, having a plan and having a go kit. I think some of the basic things that we may take for granted, that's really important when we need them. The other item was related to civilian response to active shooter events. And in this material was developed with through the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services, and it was required of all employees. And this really focuses on active shooters in the workplace, something we hope to never encounter, but unfortunately have in our workplaces, and really gives some life-saving advice and direction on how to avoid, deny, and defend. So I hope that you have at least heard of these 2 training requirements and have actually taken some training, either those 2 sessions mentioned here or something that your agency offered very similar. You can find more information about both of these in the Commonwealth Learning Center, so I'd encourage you to explore that as an option. All right, the next topic for workplace safety is probably the biggest topic of the year, COVID-19. Couldn't do a presentation without talking about that, as it has been a significant impact to the Commonwealth. What I have highlighted on the slide is actually a reference to the most recent emergency standards that were put in place for the workplace. And these were standards that can be found on the Department of Labor and Industry's website. And there is just a wealth of information about protections that need to be in place today for all employers, and that includes agencies in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I have slides that follow that are a lot of information, and I'm not normally putting that much data on a slide, but I'm hoping you're able to pause and look at it. It really lays out what is covered in the new regulations. Rather than reading through each of these, I'm going to hit kind of the top 9 areas that are part of this regulation. And as an employer, so as an agency or an institution of higher ed, you are required to assess the workplace for hazards. And managers need to work together to look at the potential risk for employee exposure. And that goes into categories, and there are categories of very high, high, medium, and low. And so those categorizations require different actions by the agency or the employer. So it's very critical to understand what each of those categories are and then what is required of the agency if a position or task within a position are categorized at those levels. Another step within the process is to ensure that there is a system in place and communication is given to employees about how to do self-assessment for screening. That's something I think we've seen in the national and local news around making sure that we all understand the signs and symptoms of COVID-19. Another piece of this legislation is about the administrative and work controls that can be put in place to protect employees. And this area speaks to things like flexible schedules and leave benefits and other workplace protections that need to occur. So definitely something critical and important to understand and know. Step 4 in this process, or just kind of the topic area, step 4, is really making sure agencies establish and implement procedures that will prevent sick employees and other persons from infecting healthy employees. So if employees become sick at work, do you have the protocols needed in place to make sure that you know how to help exit that employee quickly from the work site? Topic area number 5 really speaks to really implementing and reinforcing procedures and practices to ensure that employees who are either known or suspected of having COVID do not come to work, and they know how and when they can return to work. Obviously, that is a critical protection, not only for that employee, but for others who might be in the workplace. Step 6, or topic area 6, deals with notifications that are required. So notifying other employees, building owners, or other employers that might be in the workplace, and making sure that agencies have procedures and policies in place on what that looks like, who does what when, and agencies understand employees understand what their role and responsibility in that notification process is as well. They're continued in that legislation. Again, it's very, very lengthy. There's also a clause and information to be shared about non-discrimination. We want to make sure that we refrain from discharging any employee, and we want to put those necessary protections in place for employees who maybe even raise a concern around a workplace safety measure that hasn't been put in place that maybe should be. The last 2 areas deal with additional protections, and they really are focused on those groups of employers that have more high or very high or even medium level exposure. There are some additional requirements. And specifically, if you have 11 or more employees in the medium category or higher, you are required to have an infectious disease preparedness and response plan and train employees. So it's real important to know how jobs are classified in an agency or institution, and then what is that plan in place to really address the risk that have been identified. And the last piece is really reinforcing the need to provide training to employees that are in medium, high, or very high risk categories. There's information sharing if you're in a low risk category. So this is an extremely high level piece of legislation, but it is first in the nation, and I felt like it was important that we spent the time sharing that and making sure that you've heard about that in your agencies. I will again say there's a ton of information available on the Department of Labor and Industry's website. DHRM also has a web page for COVID-19 where you're going to find just a lot of information on leave and benefits, teleworking, and more guidance for safe workplaces. So I'd encourage you to visit the website as it's shown here on the slide. All right, my next topic is employee compensation. One question I'm always asked is about employee pay. I wish I could share some more positive news than probably what I'm going to be able to share with you today. Don't know if you're familiar with this. Hopefully you may know through your agency communications that a hiring and compensation freeze was put in place back in April of 2020. And the goal here was to slow down our hiring and also hold steady our personnel cost. Commonwealth was just in the beginning of trying to figure out what the impact of COVID-19 was going to be, and that included the financial cost. There were some exceptions for public safety and public health, and agencies could also request approvals as needed on needed actions through the governor's cabinet. This really was meant to be a temporary measure. It does, however, remain in place today as the financial folks are still realizing the full economic impact of COVID-19. But I also mentioned earlier that some of our hiring numbers were less than this year than they were last year, and a lot of that can be contributed to the last quarter, where this hiring activity was slowed down in place. Next update is on the compensation actions that we were all looking forward to in the fiscal year 21 Appropriations Act. These compensation actions were unallotted, which means the funds were temporarily removed and now remain under review as part of the special session in the General Assembly. I have at this time no further update to provide on this, as the General Assembly are still working through the budget pieces of their review process. Unfortunately, I thought that might be a different case by now, but I'm sure VGEA will update you, just as we will send out communications to agencies when we know more about these specific actions. All right, the next area I'm going to move into is benefits. This slide looks very similar to last year. It might be the exact same slide. Just to give an overview of the Office of Health Benefits, because it is such a large population that we serve, just over 201,000 eligible state employees, non-Medicare retirees, and other dependents are part of our health care plan. We also service local governments. We have the Medicare retiree health care plan and the line of duty health program. So in aggregate, this group, we process about approximately $2 billion between total claims and aggregate administrative cost a year in aggregate. So this year, health insurance benefits, we used our online platform again for open enrollment. Very similar to last year, we saw about 22,000 elections through our online open enrollment system. We also this year sent out, probably for the first time I can remember in a while, hard copy paper materials as a means to make sure that our employees received information, as we were right in the midst of the pandemic and we're concerned about employees not getting the information they might need to make open enrollment decisions. The good news out of the year, if there is any, that was the healthcare, the insurance premiums remained flat for the planned year. And this was the case for both the classified employees and the non-Medicare retirees. Once again, we were able to retain the premium rewards program, and when we started in July of the new plan year, we have about 28% of eligible employees receiving a premium reward. I've challenged the team again this year to see if we can continue to increase that, because it is a way for employees to lower cost. Also want to put another plug in, I think I did this last year, to say there's another way that you can earn cash rewards if you have a medical expense that might be covered under one of their Smart Shopper programs, or new this year under COVA Health Aware, the Aetna Informed Rewards program. Again, information's on our website. I'm actually going to show you a link to that. This is just about you taking advantage of finding still quality care facilities that might be lower cost, where you can take some of that cash reward as part of the cost benefit to the Commonwealth. Also put a reminder for our employees and non-Medicare retirees in the Richmond area that the Capitol Square Healthcare Clinic remains open. It is easy access to quality care. You can find both of links to these sites on our website, Capitol Square Healthcare. It's a great facility, wonderful staff, as well as there's information that I have flagged for you on where you can get more about the Smart Shopper program and the Aetna Informed Rewards. Again, being an employee and taking full benefit of the benefits that you're actually provided can put money back into your pocket. One slide focused on healthcare benefits for retirees. I know every year people want me to come and tell you what your Medicare eligible participant premium rates are going to be, and I tell you every year they're in the process of being developed for release, so I don't have them as final yet, but they will be coming out soon. And I can only say one more time and over again to make sure that you read your annual open enrollment and premium rate notification materials. There's just a wealth of information in those documents, and I would encourage you to really sit down and go through those upon receipt. This information is also available on the DHRM website. So for your state work groups, last year I mentioned we had a lot of things going on, no different this year, so I wanted to highlight some things you might want to watch for or listen out for. And the work groups that DHRM is participating include the work group on the balance billing. That group has now finalized their work, and you may recall legislation was actually passed last session to reduce surprise medical billing, which was such a national issue and a big deal for people who received a medical bill they were not anticipating. The Smarter Care Virginia Task Force, led by Secretary Carey of Health and Human Resources, still working hard looking at low-value care services and how to shift not only funds but consumer usage of those services to things that provide higher value for your individual health care. There is a new task force, the Governor's Task Force on Primary Care, that we are participating in, and this is really focused on making sure that across Virginia, all of our Commonwealth, including our state resources, have access to primary care physicians, and that those services are integrated, they're equitable, they're convenient, and it's affordable. So this is a great group that has come together just to look at this issue of primary care providers from all different angles. So I think you'll hear more about that in the future. And there's also a Back to Work Virginia task force. As you can imagine, and especially this week with a lot of schools starting back either virtually or face-to-face or face-to-face and virtually, childcare has gotten a lot of attention in Virginia. And this group is really focused on, how can collective whole of that system support each other, and really making sure that we put the necessary resources in place for childcare, as it has such a big impact on Virginia's workforce and the economy. And so they're really looking at it from three angles: the childcare system we had prior to the pandemic, what all happened during the pandemic and the disruption that occurred, and then what does the future state need to look like, and how do you reimagine that based on the information that you have today. So I think you'll hear also some additional outcomes as that group continues to really focus in on child care. And on that topic, I will say one of the things that DHRM has continued to work with agencies and leaders is just to reinforce flexibility, because we are in such a state of disruption with a new delivery model for education. So just know that we too recognize the issue of child care in Virginia, and especially some of the changes that have happened this upcoming, or the current year that we're actually in. All right, my next area of update is employee engagement. I'm going to start with one of our most important topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what I've put here is just a little snapshot of our website so that you can, again, if you're interested, go to our site and look at what all we have in terms of what we're focused on related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I just hired, within the last probably 2 weeks, another full-time DEI specialist. So we're continuing to work with state agencies on plans and actions they're taking to ensure diverse and inclusive workplaces. Very sensitive to the issues that we are all seeing and the national news and state and local efforts are underway, should really call attention to needed actions related to social injustices and racial justice. So DHRM's leadership team, and through our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, we're certainly committed and will continue to work with agency leadership teams and employees to make sure that we make changes that we need. We've identified 4 key goals, and you will soon be able to find these on our website. And that the first goal is to cultivate and maintain a diverse workforce, ensure that that is sustainability and that there's accountability. And I know that's a topic we've talked about a couple of times in the meetings that I've come to here. Also improving the workforce culture and its climate, and then ensuring equitable career opportunities for all employees. We're continuing to work with the Governor's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, and I am confident that next year this will probably be the area that we have the most slides on, because that's how much focus we are putting forward now to really bring action where it's needed. All right, we also launched a Enhancing Employee Engagement initiative this past February. An email was sent out to all state employees from the Chief of Staff. We put together what is called a think tank, and it was formed with representatives from multiple state agencies. They are focused on a variety of employee engagement areas, and these are just a couple of examples. They're working on looking at the Commonwealth's workforce and how do we brand ourselves across all agencies? Who are we as a state workforce, and what does that mean? There's a small team that's working on looking at all our HR policies and what barriers do they create for people and what policies do we need to update and bring forward to the future. There's a team working on whether or not we could have some type of statewide portal for collaboration across agencies and connection. This group there's an oversight committee, but there's many teams, and they have literally done surveys and focus groups, and honestly, there have been thousands of employees who have given feedback through this process, so we're very pleased to be able to reach out and just hear from so many people across the Commonwealth. So I know you're going to see some great things come out of that. I also want to highlight some of the online resources that we have related to workforce engagement. And this slide here just shows kind of a screenshot of what's on the website. I always remind employees to go look for those employee discounts. We update that list as things change, and there's always something that may be of interest where you can save some money as well. Common Health, I actually have a slide I'll share on that in a second. On this slide, I also want to point out there is a link to the Commonwealth of Virginia campaign, which is getting ready to kick off, so I would be negligent in not doing a plug-in for that. This year, funding and donations, there are many that are in need, and we're hoping that the state employee campaign can help contribute to relief in that area. All right, and speaking a little bit about our Common Health program, this group really has pivoted to an online model. They are also in agencies today providing programs where we have people in the workplace. They just launched a new campaign, Better Nights Ahead, which really focuses on the need for all of us to get a good night's rest and what that means and our abilities to make it through the day. I'd encourage anyone who's interested, definitely go take a look at their updated programs. There's a bunch of wellness videos on site now. They're on Facebook. There's a lot of options there based on what you're interested in and your platform that you'd like to utilize to participate in some of those programs. I also want to highlight the financial wellness program that DHRM has rolled out. We've done this in partnership with the Virginia Credit Union, also with the Virginia Retirement System. Again, looking at not just the physical health of our employees, but the emotional and financial wellness part as well. And there's a wealth of resources here, all available to watch and participate in at your leisure, if you can access it online, and again, just get a lot of great information that might be beneficial to you financially. And the last slide, before I jump to questions, is just to remind you that there are resources to help either you or employees or family members. This year, as I talk to people, it's truly been a challenging year for so many people and in so many different ways that I constantly remind folks that, each of us were affected very differently by different things. And if anyone feels stressed and needs assistance, there are people and resources available, and they're confidential resources where you don't have to disclose who you are. So I would just encourage you to take a look at this. If this is information that needs to be shared or information you feel that you need to access, please do so, because there are people, professionals who can help us all get through what is a very challenging time. All right, my next session is the VGEA member questions, and so I've got a Q&A. I'm going to try to cover questions that were sent in. I will say there were one or two that I thought were one-offs, and so we're going to follow up individually on those actions, and certainly we'll be glad to respond to any other questions that might result from today. So the first question received was, are there rumors to a buyout or an option for early retirement for classified employees? And I know this is one that constantly gets asked, but I'm sadly here to tell you that there has not been any discussions about this at the HRM. These actions can be costly to the Commonwealth, and they also can result in a significant loss of institutional needed knowledge, if not capitally planned. So unfortunately, don't have anything to share on this. You would probably hear as soon as I would at the same time sometimes, and because of that, I'm just going to have to leave that answer the way it is. I just don't have anything else to share at this point. I know there's a lot of uncertainty, and I know people are still waiting around to hear about budgets and the finances of the Commonwealth. Unfortunately, we are in that same situation as well. The next question, and I know this is going to be really difficult to read, but there was a question asked about the national headlines, including stories about essential workers and essential workers receiving hazardous pay. And is the hazardous pay being provided to Commonwealth employees? And so I've given some information on this slide that I hope, if this is a topic area of interest to you, you'll take a look at and read. It talks a little bit around how hazardous pay is considered in part of air-based pay in the Commonwealth. And because we have a decentralized compensation program, agencies are allowed to provide working condition supplements. And that's a situation where pay is given to employees, from some unusual risk, and usually temporary in nature. Some state agencies are in fact providing some type of supplement today, or a retention bonus, or some overtime pay for exempt staff. So I really think it's best if you personally have a question around hazardous pay, that we redirect that back to the agency, to the HR team, who can provide more insight to whether or not that's something being considered or has been considered with the agency itself. The next question was, many state employees are now teleworking on a full-time basis. Some have incurred additional expenses because of this, and some have installed costly internet service at home, as an example. Can employees be reimbursed for an expense of this nature? This is something that should be discussed with agency management. I will tell you, in general, that is not a reimbursable expense, but there may be alternate options. If it is a true need for that employee to telework and perform those services. I've seen where mobile hotspots can be issued. Sometimes it's a matter of just turning something on a mobile phone that's already issued to an employee, or it may be a position where teleworking is not the right fit. So I would, again, ask that, if this is an area of concern, to speak with management to see what efforts can be made to help with those additional expenses during this time. The next question was, we have a cohort and a culture at some places that burn up all of their sick leave. It's dishonest. What incentives can be put in place not to abuse the sick leave privilege? So I will share that abuse of sick leave is subject to disciplinary action, and extreme misuse could lead to termination. I would reframe this to say it needs to be reinforced within the agency and agency management in terms of reporting abuse and it being investigated. A worst case scenario, you could reach out to the State Fraud, Waste, and Abuse Hotline through the Office of the State Inspector General. Unfortunately, incentive programs today would not be looked upon very favorably because we want sick people to stay out of the office. And when you put an incentive program in place, sometimes the opposite occurs, where an employee is so focused on getting that incentive that they're sick and they're in the workplace. So it's a little bit of a no-win situation. But if there are really situations of gross abuse, I would encourage people to report that to management. The next question, are there any talks in reforming or simplifying the state's leave program? I will acknowledge our leave programs are numerous and complex. Leave reform has not been considered since 2011. We certainly, DHRM, recognize that there is a need to look at our leave programs, to update them, to make them simpler and easier to understand. The earliest that possibly could be done would be after the implementation of the Cardinal Human Capital Management System, which is scheduled for next year. So if this is a project that we were to undertake, and we do have it on our vision sheet, if this is a project we are to undertake, at the earliest we would look at doing that is probably 2022. I will say there were many reasons it was unsuccessful in 2011, and I think those are just things that we would have to look at again and look to see if this is a new time, new day, and could we overcome some of those resistances, I think, that we experienced back in 2011. But thank you for asking the question. The next question was, will wage employees be given any options for being paid on state holidays or when they need to take time off? So wage employees do not receive state benefits. However, this year, I do want to point out that we did allow wage employees to take the public health emergency leave, and there was additional leave protections provided under the Federal Family First Coronavirus Response Act. I know those are not related to state holidays, but I did want to point out that for the first time ever, we did have some leave benefits for wage employees this year. For the state holidays, my response to that question is that management has existing flexibility to work with wage employees to adjust schedules and hours during a work week in which a holiday occurs. So I know that's not exactly what the answer is hoped for in this question, but as of right now, that is how we would address that situation in the Commonwealth. And that's my last question. Is again, there may be a few other questions that came out that we felt were one-offs, and we'll definitely follow up and respond to those individuals directly, and I'll be glad to also take any questions. So the one thing I wanted to end with was how to stay connected. We have a lot of social media sources in our website. We are moving to try to put information at your fingertips to find based on what you need. So whether you have a LinkedIn account or a Twitter account or a Facebook account, Instagram, YouTube, it just seems like it keeps growing. There is an account that we probably have that you would benefit from either looking at or being a member on, and definitely staying up to date as we move forward with some of the priorities and programs and efforts that I mentioned here today. That's the end. Thank you.
I am going to introduce Linwood Butner, our next speaker. With nearly 50 years of experience in and around Virginia government, Linwood is a preeminent authority on legislative and regulatory matters related to transportation. Linwood served 30 years with the Virginia Department of Transportation and served as VDOT's legislative liaison for more than 20 years, and as Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles, where he held the lead legislative role. After his retirement from state government, Linwood worked as Vice President of a successful government relations and association management firm. Linwood continued to work closely with local, state, and federal transportation agencies to achieve reasonable legislative and organizational solutions for his clients and the Commonwealth. Since July 2018, he has successfully represented active and retired state employees at the General Assembly. Linwood Butner.
My name is Linwood Butner, and as Mindy in her introduction pointed out, I'm with KVCF Solutions, and we have had the privilege of working with VGEA over the last several years on legislative and government affairs. And for the last two sessions of the General Assembly, I think we can all be very proud of the work that we've done in advancing VGEA, the agenda for VGEA relative to compensation and benefits. It has been extremely successful. Last year, as an example, the governor did not put anything in his budget for the 2020 session. And we were able to work with the leadership in the governor's office, the legislature, the Senate and House, as well as the committees and subcommittees to advance a very important raise for state employees, a bonus and a raise. Of course, probably the topic that is going to guide each of us for the next few months and maybe a year or more is in 2020 is the COVID issue. As a result of reductions in revenue that has occurred over the last several years, over the last several months, we were able, the actual bonus and raises have been deleted from the next 2 budget cycles. We still have the support of the governor. We still have support and many advocates in the leadership of the General Assembly, as well as the Senate Finance and House Appropriations Committee. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about 2020. Last week, my wife and I were blessed to have a grandchild, our first. And that was one of the most wonderful experiences that anybody could ever experience, other than having your own children. But other than that, this has been one of the most difficult years that I think many of us have experienced. As Rick Fowler and I and Marshall and Dylan Bishop and our team that represents VGEA at the General Assembly and with the administration as well as the state agencies know, our employees in each of the agencies that represent state government, they are the ones that actually implement any legislative package. And look what's going on today. We're working from home. Our routines have totally changed. The dynamic of what we do on a daily basis in our respective agencies is changing dramatically. We're still struggling to find out exactly how are we going to provide the services that is so incumbent upon each of us representing our agencies for the betterment of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it's going to be changing as we evolve, as we learn more, but there is some basic tenets that must remain. I guess one of the things that I want to get across today, it is an honor to represent both members and retirees. I started with VDOT in 1969. Now, I know that's a long time ago. That's over 50 years. In 45 of those years, I've had the privilege of representing VDOT, DMV, and now VGEA in the legislative arena. And I think back to 1969. A gentleman that I worked with by the name of Bert Donovan. Bert's no longer with us, but he was one of the strongest advocates for VGEA that I have ever encountered. And within a day or two of my employment with VDOT, he sat down with me and recommended that I join VGEA. And now remember, this is 1969. I said, Bert, I don't have any money. I'm getting ready to go in service. Why should I join VGEA? And Bert said, VGEA is the voice of state employees and retirees. It is the voice. And as we meet with legislators, as we meet with the governor, we have a story to tell. And it's not our story. The story that we're telling is individuals that work within VDOT, within social services, within DMV, within all the agencies that comprise state government, that makes us able to do the things that we are doing to make everyone in Virginia's lives better. Now, are there political issues? Sure, there are political issues. But I think all of us that work the General Assembly, we have a bipartisan story to tell. And I think about, as we meet with legislators, which is one of our most important activities, as we meet with them, what we do, we share stories that we hear in the field. As Rick Fowler goes across the state and identifies and talks to people in various agencies about membership in VGEA, individuals will come up and tell a story. That story then comes back and becomes part of what we do. It becomes part of our legislative process, where we sit down with the leadership of VGEA and we develop an agenda. We develop a plan, an action plan. How do we go ahead? Most of the years that we've been here, it's pretty routine, as it has been for years. And that routine is we look at salaries, we look at benefits, and try to deal specifically with legislative bills that are put in, some good that we support, some bad that we feel like will be to the detriment of our retirees and our state employees. But what we have attempted to do is take those stories and turn them into opportunities. Are there challenges? Gosh, yes, there are always challenges. COVID is a challenge. We've always been told in many years that, oh, we don't have any money this year to help state employees. Or we've got money this year, but other people are ahead of state employees. So that's why it's important to tell the story. And that's what VGEA does. VGEA and the representatives of your organization are able to sit down with the chairman of appropriations, and we met with him this year, and the vice chair, which is almost unheard of, because we were able to do so with the VGEA individuals that came down for legislative day. So we probably had 20, 25 people in the room. And Gail and Rick and others told stories of what a piece of legislation actually means in the lives of our people, of the employees in the state of Virginia, the retirees in the state of Virginia. So what we have attempted to do, and I think probably one of the things I personally am most proud of in the last several years, there has been a large turnover in legislators. We have a lot of new legislators that have come on board, both Republican and Democrats, in the last several years, mostly Democrats, that have no concept of state agencies, what we do, how we do it, the issues that we face on a daily basis, the opportunities that may be available, the challenges that face each of us in our respective agencies. We go by and meet with each legislator. We leave information, we talk to them, we talk to their aides. So when we talk VGEA, when they see you in the hall, when they have a meeting that impacts state government in any way, we are a part of the conversation. And if you're not in the game, there's no way that you can have an opportunity to provide the input that's so critical when those considerations and those votes are taken. So, yes, I am a state retiree. I am very proud to be a state retiree, and it's an honor to work on the behalf of each of the members of VGEA, and I might throw in a little bit of just a solicitation. VGEA does, and it is the only voice of state employees and retirees. Do we do everything perfectly? Maybe not. But everyone that works in state government should participate actively in VGEA. We need help, and we solicit help for locals in Lee County And that's the other thing. We have state employees in every region, every area of the state, small, large, Fairfax, Lee County, Grundy, Buena Vista, my hometown, Tidewater. And there are each of you are constituents of a specific senator and a specific delegate. And nothing is more important when you're advancing an issue or an idea or a concern than to be able to have someone in your district come to you and say, we support this. Or Mr. Delegate or Madam Senator, this is going to be a real issue for us in the future. It's going to make our futures less attractive. This year in the special session, and Dylan Bishop will get into details of the actual specific legislation, but this year in the General Assembly, we're in special session currently. Have we ever seen anything quite like this? No. Next year, knowing that we're going to have a $2 billion deficit and that we're going to have to rethink how we typically do business. Again, as I've indicated, we typically go in looking at benefits and salaries and compensation issues. What will it be this year? And how will we do it? There's not going to be floor sessions in the General Assembly building. There's not going to be committee meetings with people standing along the sides of the walls, standing up and walking up to a podium and saying, here's my thoughts for VGEA. It's going to be totally different. So how do we at VGEA advance those types of initiatives that we want to promote? And what are those issues? You remember I told you that when Rick Fowler and others and Marshall Terry gets emails, contact emails continually, they are bringing up issues like furloughs. They're bringing up issues of work, people, co-workers leaving and people having to assume a greater responsibility. They're bringing up issues that are going to be more prevalent in the future than they have in the past. And to be candid, some of the issues we had never thought about before until this COVID-19 issues hit and state agencies and the state began on a path of how are we going to look in the future? How are we going to be able to have our employees, are they going to work from home a year, 2 years? Are they coming back? What do we do with our facilities? And from my perspective, I think it's more important and more critical to the future of state employees and retirees today than it's ever been. It's different, yes, but we always go by, is it a challenge versus opportunity? Yes, there are challenges, but in every challenge, there's an opportunity to do something for the betterment of our members. And is that not what we're about? And that's what we will continue to strive for. That's what we'll continue to work with the VGEA leadership, every member, every retiree, and I would encourage each of you to have your friends and family and co-workers become a part of what I consider the most important organization for you today and in the future as a state employee and as a retiree. And I wish you the very best for the remainder of 2020. This is a little different than our normal meeting, but certainly it's an opportunity for you to learn what we're doing. And just as a final thought, we are also blessed that we have a great relationship with DHRM and VRS. And you'll hear from the leadership of both of those agencies or organizations. And we meet with them periodically through the years and are able to do some pretty remarkable things. And finally, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you and share with you some of the government relations and legislative issues. And Dylan Bishop, who is probably, again, in my view, one of the best young legislative lobbyists that I have ever met. And I've worked with him at a state agency, and now I'm very fortunate to have him as part of our team. And he will give you some very strong insights into where we are and what we'll be doing in the 2021 session. And again, have a blessed year, and thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you.
Hello, I'm Rhonda Bowles. I'm currently a board member for VGEA. I'm here to tell you about Dylan Bishop. Dylan brings knowledge and experience from nearly every aspect of political and legislative arenas. He came from the office of Senator Charles W. Bill Carrico, where he served as Chief of Staff and legislative aide to the chairman of both the Senate Transportation Committee and the Joint Commission on Health Care. Prior to his tenure in the legislature, Dylan worked as a legislative policy analyst to the Department of Motor Vehicles and was awarded the Commonwealth of Virginia's Pinnacle Award for his work in crafting and regulatory framework for companies like Uber and Lyft. He also has effectively lobbied for a diverse group of business interests and trade association before the Virginia General Assembly and has managed successful political campaigns and grassroots initiatives across the Commonwealth. Dylan is also an associate at Kaplan, Vogler, Cunningham and Frank, PLC, where he has an administrative and regulatory practice. Dylan is a graduate of the University of Richmond Law School, and he has an admission to the Virginia State Board. And as a member of VEGA, I have seen Dylan in action representing us, and we are very fortunate to have him on our team. And I would like to now introduce him to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dylan Bishop. I'm a consultant with KVCF Solutions and a lobbyist for VGEA. As a former state employee at both the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Virginia Senate, it is my pleasure to represent state employees across the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm here today to provide a legislative update to you all. I think it would be prudent to begin with the 2020 session. Preceding the 2020 General Assembly session, all 140 legislators, 100 delegates, and 40 senators were up for re-election in 2019. The elections ushered in over 20 new legislators, many of which were Democrats. And in turn, the control of the legislature transitioned from Republicans to Democrats for the first time in about a decade. Preceding the 2020 General Assembly session, the VGEA board approved the following legislative agenda. First, to develop rapport with the new leadership and legislators. 2, to secure at least a 2% salary increase for state employees. And 3, to establish targeted raises or incentives in high turnover and high skill positions. With but one exception, and due to circumstances wholly outside of the control of VGEA, VGEA was unmistakably effective in accomplishing these goals. About 20 VGEA members and officers from an array of state agencies from all corners of the Commonwealth descended to the state capitol on February 17th to inform legislators of the issues faced by the state's workforce and to advocate for compensation increases. VGEA members had the opportunity to develop relationships with key legislators from the new leadership to the freshman legislators, including Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee Chair Senator Janet Howe, and House Appropriations Committee Chair and Vice Chair Delegates Luke Torian and Mark Sickles in an unprecedented meeting. In what proved to be a banner day, VGEA cultivated meaningful relationships with the highest ranking members of the General Assembly, elevated its profile, and most importantly, successfully lobbied the General Assembly to include a compensation package for state employees in the revised budget. Thank you to all who took the time to support our mission. It is absolutely invaluable for us to put our members' faces and stories before these legislators, and I'm certain that we would not have been as successful as we were in the 2020 General Assembly session without our members' participation. As mentioned before, the governor's proposed budget did not include raises or any sort of compensation increase for state employees or state-supported local employees. The VGEA successfully lobbied the General Assembly to revise its 2020 to 2021 budget to include the following. In year one, 2020, a 3% bonus for classified employees effective December 1st, 2020, a 3% bonus for faculty and staff at state colleges and universities effective December 1st, 2020, and a 2% bonus for state-supported local employees effective the same date. In year two, 2021, VGEA was able to lobby the General Assembly to include a 3% salary increase for classified employees and faculty and staff at our higher education institutions, and that would become effective June 10th, 2021. Wage employees would be eligible for a 3% raise. However, that cost would have to be borne out of existing funds appropriated to each agency. And finally, DHRM was to increase the minimum and maximum salary for each pay band by 3%, giving agencies additional leeway and flexibility in allocating their resources and giving raises to help with recruitment and retention of state employees. However, and this is very important to note, this $2 billion compensation package had the infamous contingency clause, which is standard operating procedure for many large-scale budget allocations. And that contingency clause says that the Commonwealth is not obligated to pay this allocation if it doesn't expect to have the money in order to spend. So that's important to keep in mind when we get to the COVID-19 pandemic and the special session that was called and began August 18th of this year. Nonetheless, getting these raises in the budget in the first place was a huge success for VGEA. Keep in mind, again, these raises were not included in the governor's proposed budget. So VGEA was effectively able to create a $2 billion budget allocation out of thin air. In terms of the targeted raises that I discussed, the third prong of VGEA's 2020 legislative session agenda, VGEA had intended to launch an advocacy campaign seeking targeted raises and incentive bonuses based on data derived from a study of the state workforce's high skill, high turnover, and hard to fill positions. This was a measure particularly of interest to millennials and the younger portion of the state workforce. We really wanted to make state employment more appealing to our younger generations, and this was our initiative to do just that. Unfortunately, Department of Human Resource Management, the agency in charge of the study, was unable to find a vendor to conduct the study in time to develop a corresponding legislative proposal. The study is now ongoing, and VGEA should be able to use the data derived therefrom in its 2021 advocacy campaign. So that concludes my conversation about the 2020 General Assembly session. At the very end of the 2020 General Assembly session is when the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, became a global proliferation and was on the forefront of everybody's minds, the General Assembly included. However, the General Assembly and the governor foresaw financial hardship on the horizon, but did not yet have enough information to make a determination on how bad things would get. Therefore, they held off until the end of the budget year, June 30th, in order to assess the damage. Things were bad enough where a budget reforecast was triggered, which allowed us to assess the damage thus far. What we found was there was a $234 million budget shortfall in the fiscal year that ended July 30th of this year. Additionally, we had forecast $2 billion in deficits over the next 2 years, which is a scary thing when the Commonwealth is constitutionally prohibited from running a deficit. We have to have a balanced budget. So the governor convened the General Assembly for a special session, which began on August 18th, to address the COVID-19 pandemic and its financial impacts on the biennial budget, which was passed this spring. They later added another charge to deal with social and police reform issues. But the special session was called initially and for the primary purpose of dealing with the financial outfall from the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, but as anticipated, Governor Northam has proposed unallocating the 3% bonus and the 3% raise scheduled for state employees and state-supported local employees. If you will recall, this $2 billion budget allocation was contingent upon the Commonwealth having sufficient funds to support the initiative. But the $234 million budget shortfall and projected $2 billion deficit in the next 2 years caused by the COVID-19 pandemic have depleted these resources and made the expenditure unrealistic. Another consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic has been temporary furloughs and the negative effects they are having on long-tenured state employees' retirement benefits. VGEA lobbied to protect furloughed state employees' retirement benefit calculations, i.e. their estimated monthly pensions, from being affected by these furloughs. We asked Senator Frank Ruff, a longtime ally of the VGEA, and member of the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee, to introduce a bill to this end. The result was Senate Bill 5119, which was introduced shortly after the beginning of the General Assembly special session this August. The bill sought to prohibit COVID-19 related furloughs from affecting state employees' retirement benefit calculations. Simple in concept, but very complicated and difficult in practicality. The bill was referred to the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee, where unfortunately it failed to pass due to concerns over the cost and administrative burden required to implement the change, and in light of the state's precarious financial situation. But Senator Ruff and the VGA will look to revisit this matter during the 2021 General Assembly session, which begins in January. Looking forward to the 2021 session, things will be quite different in multiple respects from the status quo. Whereas we usually enter the session looking to increase compensation and benefits for state employees, we now seek to address furloughs and employee safety as a result of the pandemic. Also, public participation is likely to be affected. If the special session is any indication, many, if not all, of the General Assembly will be conducted virtually. Of course, we will still advocate for increased wages and benefits, but the current financial situation makes those less attainable goals. Additionally, VGA will use this unique opportunity, where much of everything in our lives is virtual, to make state employment more enticing to millennials by insisting the Commonwealth provides more permanent telework options, again, to make state employment more appealing for our younger generation. This concludes my legislative update. Again, my name is Dylan Bishop. It's an absolute pleasure to represent the VGEA. And please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or suggested legislative proposals for the 2021 General Assembly session. Thank you.
I'm grateful for the relationships that we have maintained with VRS and DHRM. The information they bring to us is always informative and pertinent to the many employment decisions we all need to make. We value so much the work of KVCF as they lobby and represent us with the General Assembly. This year we had outstanding feedback from many of you about the legislative updates that were provided by them. I also would like to thank the VGA Board of Directors for their hard work throughout this year, and certainly our Executive Director, Marshall Terry, and our staff. Remember to look out for the Board of Directors election schedule and nominations details coming to you soon. If you have questions related to these presentations, please submit them by visiting the website and contacting us at info@vga.org. Again, thank you. It has been our pleasure to have so many of you with us today.